I'd share some tips about retirement. If you're thinking about retirement, this is a good video for you. I'm really focusing more on middle class married couple because that's what me and my husband are, but hopefully you'll be able to get some tips even if you don't fall into that category. So let's get started. All right, so the first tip is to have a plan, set a goal. Now, when me and my husband decided that we wanted to retire, we decided that we wanted to retire at age 55. We had worked most of our lives and we didn't want to work until we were dead, and so we decided to retire at 55. So that gave us a 5-year plan. We had 5 years to work on how we were going to get this all going. So we set a goal, which was 55, and then a plan, which was a 5-year plan. Now, your plan is going to be based on what age you want to retire, how long you've been working, how old you are now. So your plan may be different than my plan was. So what we had planned along with retiring at 55, we didn't want to have a house payment at all. We didn't want to have an electric payment, and we didn't want to have a car payment. So those went along with our goals, our plans that we set into motion. So tip number 2, plan it out, get ready, and be realistic. How are you going to meet those goals? How are you going to put that plan in action? And the first thing you want to look at is thinking about what kind of money you're going to have when you retire. Now, if you have not been working, if you've been in the red, you owe money all over the place, then it's going to be hard to meet that goal. You're going to have to work twice as hard to get those things paid off. But assuming that you've been working at a job for a while, and if you haven't, that's the first thing, get into a job where you're going to be able to get some retirement funds, okay? My husband worked for a cable company, and I was a teacher. And I didn't work as a teacher. I was 15 years as a teacher. Okay, so think about what your retirement money is going to be. What money are you going to be able to count on? If you have any side jobs or any kind of money that you're pulling from stocks, dividends, whatever, what kind of money are you going to be living off of after you retire? So those are the things that you want to think about. The other thing that you want to think about is the time gap that you have. We retired at 55, so there's a gap in between the time that we can collect our retirement money, the money that we get from the jobs that we worked, and the money that we put into 401k or Social Security. So once we reach that age, 50, 59 and a half or whatever it is, 65 for Social Security, whatever it is, once we reach those goals, then our income will increase. But we want to make sure you think that all out as you're planning your retirement. The other thing that you want to plan is or think about is what kind of bills do you have? Are you going to be able to pay those bills off? What kind of bills are going to stay with you after you retire? You also want to look at your savings. What do you have saved? And you need to have a savings, okay? You can't just retire without a savings because there's so many unexpected bills that come up. Just your car breaks down, the air conditioning goes out in your house, whatever. There's things that come up that you don't normally calculate when you're going to retire. So think about that savings and whatever amount you decide to save, and that's going to vary based on what your bills are, what your finances are, those kinds of things, how you plan on living, what you plan on doing after you retire. So the amount of money that you're going to have saved is going to vary based on what your life is going to look like, right? So just think about it. Let's say, I don't know, I'm just randomly pulling numbers off the top of my head, but let's say that you are planning to have $200,000 saved. Then also set a limit. I don't want to go below, okay? Once you go below, you know that you either have to start watching your money more, or you're going to have to get a side job to start getting that money back up or doing something. So just kind of figure out what kind of money you're going to have saved and how you're going to do that. So kind of an example of what our plan looked like was we had a home in California, and we sold that home because there was no way we were going to pay it off before we could retire. There was just no way we would be working the rest of our lives. So we sold that home. With that home, we were able to buy a home in Arizona. We were able to put in solar, so no house payment, no electric bill. Well, a little bit, but not much. Then we bought 2 new cars that were going to take us through our retirement years, or hopefully, and so no car payment. And so that was just kind of our plan. And then it also put a little bit of cushion in our savings. The money that we had planned to live off of was our two retirement incomes, which is not a lot. And then because I only taught for 15 years, so it's not a lot. And then we also, one thing that we didn't really calculate during our whole planning time was the amount of money that we were going to be paying on our medical insurance in between that time and the time that we were actually able to collect medical coverage from Social Security. So that takes a pretty good chunk out of the money. Also, I was already doing a couple other side jobs. So I was already doing Teachers Paid Teacher. I was already doing YouTube. And then as I started getting, after I retired, I started doing teaching online for like 25 hours a week. So that was the income that we were able to live off, again, with some money saved that we didn't want to go below and having everything else paid off. So tip number 3 is really looking at how we did it, what the process was. And the first thing we did was we paid off all of our charge cards. We only spent as much as we could pay off the next month. So you had to get out of debt. You couldn't have all those bills. And if you're young, start paying them off now. You're never going to get ahead if you're in debt. So that was one of the first things we did. The second thing we did was we got rid of things that we didn't need, both bill-wise, expense-wise, and even in our house, we started downsizing. Third thing we did was we bought a home in Arizona. Not an ideal place to live because it's super hot, but the expense of a house in Arizona, where we were able to pay it off after selling our home, versus living in California, was just such a huge difference. So that was a sacrifice that we made in order to retire, was living someplace that was a lot more affordable. Now, one thing that we did do when we bought our home is we actually bought our home in Arizona quite a few years in advance. And that was just kind of by chance. We were kind of thinking a vacation home and maybe someday a retirement home. But the cost of the house was so low that we were able to afford the additional payments while we were still working. So then when we did retire and we did sell our home, it wasn't a huge payment. So that was great. And the other thing we did was we sold some of those bonds and stocks that really weren't making any money. And just to know that putting the money in a savings account is not going to make you any interest at all, really. But it's just to have that money available to you, just kind of liquid money that you can access if you need it, if those emergencies come up. So that's kind of what we chose to do with it. All right, so number 4 tip is to really consider if retirement is the life for you. If you were a person that really had a hard time during COVID, if you're a social person, if you like being out there around people, then you really have to think about retirement. It's a whole different life, especially if you live in the middle of the desert in Arizona. Not around a lot of people. There's not a lot of stores or even a lot of reasons for me to go to the store. And so it's definitely a different life. You need to think of what your life is going to look like once you do retire. What are the hobbies you're going to do? What are some things that you want to do as far as traveling or seeing different things? What are your real life goals with retirement? And really think about that, because some people really enjoy working, and so retirement isn't for them. They love being around other people. They love that thinking process. You really definitely need to have a hobby or a plan to travel or to do something, a side job, a little job that gives you the flexible schedule and allows you to work when and if you choose to. Because if not, you're just going to be bored. And retirement is less work. It's not roll over and die. So really think about what you want your retirement life to look like. Another thing that you need to think about is family. If you have family that is dependent on you and asked for it, or that you've just been willingly able to help in whatever way it is, if you don't have those finances coming in, you may not be able to help the same way you used to be able to help. And you also don't want to become a full-time babysitter. So just kind of think of what your family life is going to look like. And the other thing to think about is a couple things that people don't really think about. But your retirement life is more idle, right? You're not working your tail off anymore. So things to think about is your health, making sure that you're staying healthy, exercise, weight. You definitely gain more weight once you're retired because you're just not moving as much. So you have to think of ways to keep active and to keep fit. But anyways, these are some tips that I hope you find helpful in your decision to retire. It is a great life, but it's not for everybody. So really think about that. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you're young and haven't even started really thinking about retirement, then you definitely want to get into a job that allows you a long-term retirement program, that allows you to put money into a 401k and that also contributes to it. You want to think about how you're going to pay off those bills, how you're going to save money. So really just plan for the future. You never know what the future holds, but it's never too early to get started. So good luck and thanks for watching.